Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and last week we had 3 questions. I think partly because the thread got bumped to like the second or third page. There were so many comments after that season opener against ACU. This week we have a different problem. We had so many questions. There's no way I could get to all of them in this mailbag, but hopefully through the Hump Day chat or the post game live chat, or just hit me up on the board. I could answer all your questions, but I did select several, so let's dive right into them. First one comes from Cajun Raider, who asks, he says, DeRuiter is an experienced coach and we'll get this figured out, but how short of a leash is Kitley on? Well, I'm not sure his leash is that short at all. I know that may sound crazy to some people. I know people, a lot of fans have been, and not just fans, myself. I've been dissatisfied with the offense on a number of occasions, a number of games. And, you know, I think a lot of people want something different than what we've seen from the offense. It's been inefficient. It hasn't been a high octane, explosive offense, especially last week against Washington State. And Washington State is not Georgia. Again, tip of the cap to the Cougars. They played a really good game, but Texas Tech's offense is, there's so many screens on some occasions. People are either calling for more deep balls, more running of the ball, anything but what we're seeing. Call the play that scores, that kind of thing. And I understand, but I have not heard anything behind the scenes in terms of from the coaches that Kitley's on a short leash. Now, whether that changes or not, or whether they're just keeping it real hush hush, that might be the case. But I'm not certain that he's on as short of a leash as some might expect. Next question comes from Tech Freak, and this could help any offensive coordinator. He says, any updates on Taj? Of course, all Big 12, All-American candidate Taj Brooks, who missed last week. He said, will he play this week? Well, McGuire was very optimistic on Monday, but McGuire is optimistic pretty much all the time about almost everything. He was pretty optimistic the week before, then he didn't play against Washington State. So he did say Taj was expected to practice either on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember. It's an arm injury, not a foot or leg injury. Hopefully Taj is able to play this week and he could be a big difference maker. I'm kind of on the fence about this because I want him to be healthy for Big 12 play especially. So if he needs another week, then hey, okay. But, you also want to beat North Texas, and the way Texas Tech's been playing, they need all hands on deck, including Taj Brooks. He's their ace in the hole. So, hopefully Taj is able to play well and make a big difference for Texas Tech this week. But I don't know for certain that he's playing. Afros 53 says, with so many questions at offensive line, a quarterback who actually hasn't played a whole lot, and a defense populated by so many kids, how did so many experts around here talk themselves into believing this would be a big year for Tech? Well, that's a relative term in terms of big year. And I don't know who you're referring to as experts. Monty Joe said 6-6. I said 8-4, which is a good year. It'd be a good year for Texas Tech, but I don't know about if that quantifies as a big year. 8-4 sounds highly unlikely, or looks highly unlikely based on what we've seen here recently. But Texas Tech has played much better later in the season under McGuire. And in terms of what you mentioned, offensive line is something I've talked about ad nauseum for years, including this offseason, and it being a problem, which is why I was like 8. And I was actually heavily criticized when I said 8-4 going into the season. People wanted me to say 10. I was like, I don't see this team winning 10 games. In part because of the offensive line. Now, quarterback's tricky because I know Mighty Joe and I have discussed on camera publicly, like, just how good is Barrett Morton? Do we really know how good he is? Now, he's shown flashes. He's had some really good games, and he looked good in the opener, granted, against ACU. He had a really good game. He had really good games in Big 12 play in the past against West Virginia, not last year, but the year before, and then Oklahoma State. And then last year he gutted through, a pretty severe injury to his throwing shoulder. So, and not to mention, he was a 4-star recruit, elite 11 quarterback, all that. So it's not like we're the only ones who saw Barrett Morton's talent. And I haven't given up on him, and he does have a pretty good amount of experience. Not crazy amount of experience, but he's played in double-digit conference games at this point, I believe. So, or close to that anyway. He's played enough to have some quality experience. So that's part of it. Throwing in the new wide receiver core, which, Josh Kelly, I think, is leading the country in stats, which I know they're just stats, but he's looked pretty good. So is Caleb Douglas. Jalen Conyers, at least against ACU, looked really good. So those are good additions on offense. On defense, it's a little trickier because inexperience was something I was nervous about. I talked about it with Tech coaches. But a lot of talent, a lot of depth was what it appeared. A lot of guys who don't care about Texas Tech have rated these younger guys as, highly rated recruits. So it's not just us. Now, putting all that together, having success, making everything work, all the things work, that's a whole nother story. And then what also I couldn't foresee was that all of a sudden this team would be highly penalized, turn the ball over at a high rate, all those things. So much miscommunication on defense. I think that's come as a surprise to pretty much everybody. So I think and we're only 2 games into the season. So if they turn things around, they're not, like I said, Georgia's not on the schedule. Alabama's not on the schedule. So heck, not even Kansas State or Utah are on the schedule. So let's see what happens this week. Let's move forward, see what happens this season. Syntax Red Raider says, why is this team resembling an early Matt Wells team? We are big on penalties, and Tech also has probably the most missed tackles. Yeah, I kind of touched on that with the last question, but all the penalties, 21 penalties in 2 weeks, that's terrible. 10.5 penalties a game. And especially since so many of them are pre-snap penalties on offense. They really are shooting themselves in the foot, and they're not good enough on offense right now to overcome those mistakes. So, McGuire has mentioned that they brought in some refs, or they were bringing in some refs, and they have this week, and they're going to be at every practice, and they were going to go over, what they did wrong, and that he had experience doing that at Baylor in 2021 when they started off the season with a lot of penalties, and it did fix things. So we'll see if that improves it. But this again is coming out of nowhere. The first 2 seasons under McGuire, Tech was 55th and 48th. Now they're 126th in the country out of 133 schools. So they were in the top half of the country the first 2 years under McGuire. Now all of a sudden, in terms of how many flags they're getting, one of the very worst in the country. And I did not see that coming. I really didn't. And I've said before in videos, I think that's a reflection of coaching. I believe McGuire agrees with that, and he's doing what he thinks he can do to fix that. So we'll see if it works. They really got to get that fixed. They do, because the margin for error is just very slim. Now, the missed tackles, that's very surprising to me too. This has been a pretty good tackling team overall. Hadn't been resembling the Kingsbury years. You mentioned Matt Wells, but I thought they were better tackling under Matt Wells than the previous coaching regime. Not great, but better. And I just don't see a Joey McGuire team being a bad tackling team, but they have been through 2 games. I can't deny it. So maybe it's youth and inexperience. I think I'm going to answer this more in a question coming up, but I think guys being unsure of what they're supposed to be doing is causing them to play slower, not as fast on defense. And then one of the end results is being not in the right place to make the plays, and then they're missing the tackle. So, a lot to clean up for sure. All right, next question is from Panhandle Raider, who said, if Kidley's dad wasn't Tech's national champion winning track coach, would he really be the OC at Tech? Yeah, I honestly don't think that has anything to do with it. And some people are going to be like, whoa, but I really don't. In what world does a track coach, and I like Wes Kittle, we've had him on a radio show, good guy, all that, but it's track. How does track have anything to do with college football, or is it anywhere close to a scale? Track doesn't make any money for the university, doesn't make money for the athletic department. Football is where it's at. So in what world does an athletic director or the powers that be sacrifice that kind of making that kind of money in football, that kind of success in football for the track coach, even someone as accomplished as a Hall of Fame, national championship winning, multiple Big 12 championship winning track coach as Wes Kittle. That just, before even really digging into it, like that makes absolutely zero sense. Where would that happen anywhere in the country? It's not a thing. Zach Kittle was an up and coming offensive coordinator. We saw firsthand Houston Baptist, him and Bailey Zappi, what they did together. They went on to Western Kentucky and lit defenses up. Zach Kittle, I believe before he was hired at Tech, was actually 24/7 Sports National Offensive Recruiter of the Year. The season before he came to Texas Tech, they put up monster numbers. So that is, I mean, yes, there's connections. Obviously, he went to school here. His dad, he served under Kingsbury, all that stuff. But no, I mean, Kittle was very highly thought of prior to coming to Texas Tech nationally by people who don't care about Texas Tech. So I know that might be hard to believe right now, but that is the truth. So I really don't. Now, him choosing Texas Tech is probably more on his side in terms of choosing Texas Tech than Texas Tech choosing him. The fact that he has so many family ties to Texas Tech and he loves Texas Tech. Panther Cat wants my opinion of the overall effort and leadership of the players. Yeah, not good, man. Not great, Bob. Like the meme. I think that beyond like that and the penalties, those two things are the biggest disappointment to me. Is like, and I've said this before, but you asked me the question, so I'll say it again. I hate that there's very little energy from the team right now. Like I get later in the game, you're struggling, it's not fun, but we really haven't, against ACU, against obviously Washington State, there was just very little enthusiasm, intensity, physicality, joy, swag, whatever you want to, moxie, whatever you want to, all those adjectives. Like we didn't see it, and I felt like we saw that at Tech, even like the last 2 years. So it's very disappointing. I think it's there's so much that's dependent on controlled emotion in this sport. About as much as any team sport I've ever seen. Basketball is pretty close to them, but playing and being able to control those emotions, but playing with a certain intensity and physicality. It's why you see like a team look so great one week and then look terrible the next, because a lot of it could depend just on the emotion, the bigger, for lack of a better word, that a team plays with from week to week. It matters, and it could be for a number of reasons. But right now, we haven't seen that from Texas Tech. And I think most of it is because guys are confused on what they're supposed to do. And that falls on the coaches. But then, again, what I'm hearing from the coaches, which leads me to our final question in this week's mailbag, is like the players are showing they know what to do and they're playing fast in practice, and then get out in the games and it's like they lose their mind because, the big spotlight's on them. And I've been doing this for a minute. I've seen that a lot. And it's usually with inexperienced players. I mean, because they're just not used to that kind of attention. It's completely different on a practice field than having 60,000 screaming fans, knowing you're on national television, all that stuff. So people lose their mind sometimes, but you hope with enough experience, they learn to tune all that out. And they just focus. They get, a certain type of tunnel vision and just play the game, play the sport they've been playing and been training to play for a lot of their lives. So, and final question, like I said, comes from TTU in Colorado, who says, what are my thoughts on Monday's presser? Yeah, well, I've shared a lot of them since then. I think this question was asked earlier in the week, but what can you say? When the team goes out and plays as poorly as it did, and, there's Tech has a really good hype department in terms of social media department, all the videos. They do the brand thing. Coach McGuire himself is great at hyping his own team and all that. Very likable, charismatic person. So, people are excited. Texas Tech fans are like, this is our year. Well, that's not what we've seen so far, obviously. And the coaches, have to face the music. And I'm not saying a lot of tough questions were asked, but And they were asked about penalties. They were asked about not throwing the ball deep. They were asked about the deep. Like I asked Coach DeRuer about, uh, you know, running quarterbacks hurting his defense, and he said he wasn't prepared for Washington State's quarterback to run that much. And I was kind of surprised at that. He said that about Avery Johnson last year. Now Avery Johnson hadn't played a whole lot, Kansas State's quarterback going into that, but he ran for like 4 or 5 touchdowns or something on Tech, and then Washington State's quarterback just broke a program record for rushing yards by a quarterback, 197 yards. So, in the book on him was that he is a true dual threat quarterback. So I was kind of surprised to hear that he didn't have a contingency plan in case they decide to do quarterback run heavy or just run the quarterback a lot. And so that kind of surprised me. Like maybe you should have that contingency ready moving forward, because I think other teams are going to do that against you. Kidley kind of surprised me when he was asked by another reporter about, throwing all these short passes and screens. He's like, we're going to throw the ball deep. So I felt like that's not what he asked. And I felt like he was kind of gaslighting us some. We're going to continue to throw the ball deep. It was kind of like, so I asked a follow up, and he just said screen game. They're not going to go away from it. They have numbers. They're going to do that, but they also want to take shots deep. So I thought McGuire is usually, and I know people are mad, so they're going to read into comments what they're going to read into. I mean, and I don't want to control what people read into, but you asked me my opinion. I think McGuire is pretty stand up about answering questions. I was surprised that he was so heavy on the defense. The defense hadn't played good, but the offense hadn't played great either. So I was surprised he was so focused on the defense, but that's what he believes. I also thought it was good to hear him double down and say, like, yeah, I am reconsidering our analytical approach to going for it on fourth down based on our team. So I was glad to hear that. I didn't know if he'd ever go back on that, change his mind on that. It's good that he's considering it. I believe it's good. So we'll see where it goes from there. Ultimately, all that matters is what the players do. The coaches can talk, I can talk, but what really matters is, if these players play smarter with more emotion, controlled emotion, more physicality, and execute, because we haven't seen them do those things through 2 games. But it's early, so we'll see what they do against North Texas, and then they get Big 12 play going. They got 3 home games in a row now, starting with North Texas. So, Texas Tech has played well at home under McGuire. So maybe they can get on a roll, turn things around, and have a good season. But that's going to do it for this week's Mailbag. Really appreciate your questions. Thank you for watching, and until next time.